Hey, everybody. Thank you for joining us and welcome to the Disruptor Discussions Masterclass. My name is Jennifer Fry, and I am the CEO of Appreciated Asset Business Solutions, where we create, build, and fill sales pipelines for industry disruptors. And we do that with done for you strategy as well as done with you strategy, and have some up levels in our service that are coming. I'm excited to share with you all soon. Anyway, to give you a little background here, our mission at Appreciated Asset is to create a ripple effect for incredible business solutions and helping them grow their solutions and helping them grow their own businesses. And our purpose is to create a stage to highlight industry disruptors and really honor them for their courage to stand out against status quo and offer a service that is above and beyond. So now it is apples and oranges. There would be no one else to work with. Once you're able to really message your business in a way that creates you in an echelon that just doesn't have anything to do with the noise of anyone else that says they do what you do. You can deliver in a way that is just superior, and that's what we're here to do today, is highlight one of those incredible disruptors. Because we started this class, our Disruptor Discussions, it's a weekly masterclass, because as much as our purpose and our mission is to help businesses grow, we know that there's a lot of other ways to do that as well. I firmly believe that there are zero problems in a business that more revenue cannot solve. And while we're here to do that for our clients, I, over the years, have met some incredible experts in all kinds of different areas that can also help businesses bring in more revenue through their expertise. And so that's what we're here to do, is share these experts every single week with you and show you different ways to grow your business with some ideas that maybe you haven't considered before. Bernie and I met, gosh, over a year ago, right?
Yeah.
Is that right, Bernie?
Yeah,
we met over a year ago in a networking group. And when we met, it was just kind of like this instant chemistry because we both are so committed to the way we serve our clients. But also we knew that there was a way for us to work together. I shared with him about this idea that I had to start this masterclass, and he was just automatically like, let's do it. Or in my favorite term, LFG. So what we did is we started this back in the spring. We're in about month 4, I think, of our work together. Every single week we brought all of these participants. And a couple months ago, I said to Bernie, I was like, you need to do this because you are so incredible at what you do that you need to come on and you need to share that expertise so that everyone can see. I love the title today, Virtual Trainings That Don't Suck, because how many of us have been on ones that do? But, people need to see ways that they can get really disruptive in their thinking about their trainings, whether it's the trainings that they're giving or the trainings that they're taking. You want to make sure that you're really intentional with the way you spend that time. Otherwise, your calendar can fill up and it's just non-productive for you and for your team. So I'm going to go ahead and read you his bio. But I just cannot thank you enough, Bernie, for being here. Even though you're here every week, we actually get you on camera today, which is amazing. So everyone can see the amazing stash. And can't wait to have you share. There we go. All right, so Bernie Desantis III is the owner of Insignia Training Partners, a full-service learning and development company specializing in outsourced or fractional training services for businesses. Put another way, Insignia Training is a training broker. He brings over 2 decades of experience in training leadership, facilitation, design, and production of virtual events, webinars, workshops, and masterclasses in unique, niche, and well-traveled markets. With a passion for fostering genuine relationships and communication, Bernie places a high value on the human element in business. He understands that success is not merely about money and numbers, but about building meaningful relationships, consistently delivering exceptional experience. We are so deeply aligned there. If you see Bernie on the streets, you will know him by his epic mustache. I mean, come on. Seriously, he's probably twisting and training his stash like a cartoon villain right now. On cue. Thank you, Bernie. In the classroom, Bernie brings a unique blend of real experiences and high energy facilitation to the realm of corporate training. Engagement and connection are the elements most often missed in training programs, and Bernie's team brings that in spades. Insignia collaborates with businesses of all sizes, regardless of industry, to streamline and enhance their corporate training initiatives, whether it's training new hires to sell widgets, software implementations, soft skills virtual workshops and webinars, strategy, coaching, or designing bespoke leadership development programs. We deliver efficient and cost-effective solutions. Bernie's commitment to excellence is unwavering. Bernie's leadership is guided by a set of core beliefs that include the importance of punctuality, integrity, continuous improvement, and the value of simplicity. His philosophies emphasize the significance of relationships and learning from every experience. In addition to his role as a business leader, Bernie is the president of Growth Mode Engaged, a national B2B success champion networking group. Bernie is the father to a stepson and daughter, Benjamin and Gwendolyn. Bernie is also an ordained dude and legally authorized to perform wedding ceremonies. Oh, this is news to me. And what you have in most authorized to perform wedding ceremonies and what have you in most states. Wow, we may have to talk on that later. Connect with Bernie on LinkedIn and learn more about his journey and insights in the world of training and development on LinkedIn. And we'll have all of those links in the notes for you and in the chat. So I'm going to hand things over to Bernie to present his brilliance, because, man, I've learned so much from him during the time we've been working together. And then if you have any questions for anyone in the audience, go ahead and drop those in the Q&A, and I will make sure to get to those as soon as we wrap his presentation. So Bernie, thank you for being here. You're always here, but thank you for being in front of the camera today. And let's hear it.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me, Jennifer. Honestly, it's an honor to be able to present to your audience. So I really do appreciate the opportunity to work with you both behind the camera and today in front of it. So off we go then. I'm doing double duty today, so I'm producing and speaking. So just be advised, everyone in the audience. Let me spotlight. There we go. All right. So again, I'm Bernie Desantis. I'm the owner of Insignia Training Partners. Jennifer went through, the entire bio there, so I won't regurgitate all of that. But again, we are a fractional learning and development provider or training broker. And what we ultimately do is connect organizations that have training needs with the right resources and people to build out those world-class training programs and courses, ultimately at a fraction of the cost of hiring internally those resources. So that could be things like a fractional chief learning officer for organizational development, enablement, and training strategy, designers to build out those courses, instructors and facilitators to teach that content, coaches, project managers, LMS administrators, and of course, virtual producers for online events. We are industry product and service agnostic. In other words, I really don't care necessarily what the widget is. We are training experts. That's the industry that we play in. And we ultimately only care about support of the learning and the engagement. Now, while we'll always do that project or fractional work, I'm really focusing on solving just one major issue. I want to help people and businesses to gain more clients and make more money from their virtual events. How we do that is ultimately by helping them to create really engaging webinars, workshops, and masterclasses. Most content creators, subject matter experts either struggle to fill their seats or they struggle to convert those people who show up to those events into paying clients for one reason or another. Now, obviously, Insignia won't sell for you, but we can help to put butts in the seats, and we do help you to put on a really engaging virtual event that ultimately your ideal clients lean into. And if there's one thing that I've learned over the years, it's that an engaged audience is primed to buy, right? And it's really that simple. Of course, simple doesn't always mean easy though, right? The flip side of that, unengaged or disengaged audiences, well, they're ultimately not going to buy from somebody who is boring or that doesn't engage with them at the event, or just all around, it's a crappy event, right? Since the beginning of COVID, when the world shut down, Insignia, we've helped companies large and small to deliver over 5,000 engaging virtual training courses Some of our clients include Ernst & Young, Johnson & Johnson, McKinsey, to name a few of the blue chips, along with many smaller organizations as well. Jennifer, obviously, here included in that. And regardless of whether you're a solopreneur, a Fortune 100 company, or somewhere in between, if you're doing virtual events, you need to set yourself apart by creating engaging experiences for your attendees. And even if it's just about making that learning stick, you can make it stick ultimately by engaging with your audience. And, ultimately, that's why you're here and tuning into this today, right? You expect that Jennifer will bring great presenters in to talk about how they disrupt their industry. And if you're showing up today or watching this, you have an interest in improving your virtual game. And so that's what we're going to dive into today. So let me go ahead and share my deck and we will get a rolling. All right. So let's briefly go back in time to 2020 when the world shut down. Everyone had to go virtual due to COVID. And frankly, 98% of people had no friggin' clue what it was that they were doing. Insignia was contracted by Ernst & Young to produce their virtual training courses. And if you don't know, EY is a global tax and advisory firm. They have close to 500,000 people globally. And you may actually be shocked to hear that an organization of that size had a really small training department, just a few hundred people. And they were actually still doing about 75% of their trainings in person when COVID hit. So you can imagine it was a pretty big lift and shift for them. Now, a majority of the courses that they were delivering were for what's called certified professional education credits. And these were courses that were required for them to keep their professional licenses, right, to continue doing business for EY. And these courses were being delivered not by the training department, but rather by subject matter experts within the business. So these were tax advisors, accountants, financial advisors, and the likes, not trained trainers. So again, you can imagine that when COVID hit, it was difficult for them. And I will be perfectly honest and share with you, it was dumpster fire after dumpster fire after dumpster fire in the early days. No one would come on camera. Participants dropped out. They would blame poor internet. But even those people who stuck around had almost zero participation. And again, these courses were required for them to keep their professional licensing to do business. And what we found ultimately, the reason was that there was no engagement. Many of the facilitators thought they could take their in-person content that they were delivering pre-COVID and just jump on Zoom, deliver exactly the same way, and that they would get the same result that they always did. Obviously, they were wrong. What happened was they would talk at people. They didn't use the tools that were available to them in the platform, and they ultimately didn't engage the audience. So you would join that Zoom meeting or webinar, find the facilitator themselves were off camera, or they weren't in frame, or their audio was grainy, garbled, sounded like they were talking through a fishbowl. And again, no one knew how to use any of the platform tools like polls or breakout rooms effectively. I mean, let's be honest. People were struggling even to share their screen. And frankly, that still happens today, I might add. So, participants would get frustrated, bored, distracted, and then drop out of the meeting and have a terrible taste in their mouth for the content that was being delivered. So how we helped was we provided over 50 virtual producers to help manage that virtual classroom for every single training course that EY did for over 2 years. And what we saw was participation and engagement make a complete 180. After we joined on, we kept those facilitators, subject matter experts, focused on their area of expertise, right? Their content and delivering it as well as they could and engaging with the participants. So participants started to stay on camera. They didn't drop out during breakout rooms. They responded to the chat opportunities. They answered the polling questions, almost like magic. And again, they were required, so they had to do it. But before they had producers managing that engagement, they weren't doing it. So let's fast forward to today. Some people have actually become really good at virtual delivery. And honestly, kudos to them for figuring it out on their own. And I won't say that I'm perfect by any means, but I like to think that I'm probably better than most. And the things I'm going to share with you today are from a producer perspective, as opposed to a speaker, a trainer, or a facilitator. Because again, some people unfortunately still suck at virtual events. They are making the same mistakes and are putting out dumpster fire events left, right, and center and calling them masterclasses. And again, it's not that those people don't want to do a great job or they don't have great subject matter to share. but rather they just don't know what they don't know, right? It's kind of an unconscious incompetence. And I would even encourage you to go on LinkedIn and scroll your feed for a few minutes. I can almost guarantee that you will find a dozen master classes that you go to today or tomorrow, and most of them will be poorly run. So please, please, please don't be that person. If you're going to run a virtual event, don't Zoom alone. Get a producer to help you manage the engagement and logistics. And honestly, if you are a speaker, you're a business owner, you're a subject matter expert, and you're not doing virtual events as a business development activity, you are in fact missing out on showcasing the skills and the expertise that your clients actually want to pay you for. And something to remember is if they show up for your virtual event or your course, they're already interested in the content that you're talking about, right? Again, you guys all joined Disruptor discussions today to learn from experts. And if you joined specifically today, it's because you want to learn a little bit more about facilitating virtual events. And the thing that I'm going to talk to you about, obviously in conjunction with virtual events and training programs, is tied right in with networking, right? Because people are networking virtually now as well. And Jennifer and I were talking about this as we were getting ready to go live. It's amazing sometimes when you'll do a virtual coffee, a one-on-one with somebody, the way that they will show up to a virtual meeting. Obviously, I'm all for people showing up as they are, being themselves, but I think people get really comfortable working at home, right? And you know, kind of the example that Jennifer and I were talking about is, you know, a lot of times females will show up on camera to these virtual networking meetings and events, and they're in a tube top. It quite literally looks like they are not wearing anything when they're on camera. And if you don't think that's distracting, believe me, it is for anyone. So we're going to talk about some of those things as we proceed throughout the course of my 20-30 minutes here. So I always recommend that if you are doing a virtual training program, you share your objectives with your attendees, confirm for them that they are in the right room and then they are going to take away what they're expecting to. And for us today, we really just have one objective in the time we have together, and that is to identify some virtual facilitation and networking best practices and talk about some of the engagement features that are available in Zoom. And these will be things that you can implement immediately into your next virtual training, workshop, webinar, masterclass, event, or networking opportunity. It's also always a good idea to set the ground rules for your participant in a virtual training program. And if I were running this as a full training today, these would be the ground rules. And I would have you chat in which are most important to you as a participant, right? Because I want to get that buy-in from people. Now, for me, number 1 and number 5 are most important in this list, right? So I really want people to participate and interact, want them to be on camera, and want them to use the platform features that we are using, right? But number 5, actually, in my opinion, is more important and worth a couple of minutes, if you will, or seconds here of some attention, right? Because when you're talking about distractions, how many of you, and this is kind of a rhetorical question, are working from more than one monitor today? I interact with folks who, many of them are working from just a laptop, but a lot of people who have a home setup, they're working from multiple monitors. I myself work from 7 monitors, and I'm not saying that to impress anyone, but ultimately to illustrate my point. In my setup, there is plenty to potentially distract me if I were a participant to a virtual training program. Right. In addition to what I have here on my main screen, which is Zoom, I have my email over here to my left. I could have LinkedIn open over here. I could have Facebook open over here. I could have Slack or Teams open over here. I mean, I could even be watching a baseball game on this monitor over here, getting completely distracted away from the point of the very meeting that I am attending. Right. So I want you to think about that for a second. How many distractions are there when you think about all of the things that could potentially distract a potential participant from what it is that you're trying to teach them, right? When they attend your virtual event, it's not just about the screens. There's a lot of different things. And the flip side of that is those of you working from only one monitor, especially if you're doing virtual facilitation, highly recommend that you get yourself a second monitor, even if it's just a small portable one that you can plug and play when you're facilitating, because it makes a huge difference. Trying to share a deck and run your meeting from just one monitor is exceptionally hard. And I honestly haven't met a single person who doesn't struggle to manage it all from just one monitor. So that is really your first tip for today. If you don't have a second monitor, get a second monitor, and be aware that most people are working from more than one monitor. Always also recommend sharing an agenda with your virtual training and or your networking person. If you have some things that you want to talk about, let them know what it is that you want to talk about. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. And ultimately, you want to make sure that you are respecting the people's time who are showing up to your virtual event. Start on time, end on time. Let them know what's going to happen throughout the course of that event. Okay. So today we're going to talk about some of those best practices. I'm going to show you a funny clip that at least I think is funny, but also illustrates a point. We're going to cover really briefly the platform tools. I'm just going to identify them for you. And then we're going to do a quick kind of lessons learned wrap up, if you will. So again, kind of a rhetorical question, but I want to get you guys thinking. What are some examples that you personally have witnessed or experienced that made a virtual training bad? So some of the things that I see is things like the presenter appears to be unprepared or unfocused on their training program. Presenters that don't know how to use the platform appropriately and effectively, or they're struggling to do things. They don't read the chats, even though they are asking you to participate in the chat. They don't ask for participation at all. Sometimes, and this is out of their control, there are technical issues, right? Bad internet bandwidth and things like that, but it does create a negative experience for people. Bad audio or video. And honestly, I'm going to cover that in a little bit more detail in a second, but bad audio is a killer. If they can't even log into your event for any reason, that is a major detractor as well, right? If it takes them 5 to 10 minutes to get in, they're probably disengaged at that point. Poor transitions to activities, that can slow things down. And of course, just waiting for stuff to happen. It gets really frustrated and boring if you are a participant. And of course, as I mentioned, the event doesn't start or end on time, or, maybe the speaker is just Ferris Bueller's Day Off, the teacher, right? Ben Stein, just monotone and boring. So those are all things that contribute to a poor experience in a training program. So these are some well-known things that, quite frankly, you should be paying attention to, but they are absolutely worth reiterating because I see people miss on this stuff all of the time. So let's go through lights, camera, action. Guys, being on camera alone is engaging. And when you think about the Moravian communication model, right? 7, 38, 55, right? Your words, your tone, your body language, your physiology. Body language communicates the most. So you absolutely want to be on camera. You may notice I'm bringing my hands into frame every now and again. I'm Italian. I talk with my hands all the time. And if I'm not, it probably looks weird. So again, make sure that you're on camera, make sure that you are bringing your hands into frame and leverage your body language, right? You want to have good posture. You want to lean in a little bit. Act as if you are in person, because just because you're off camera or not, your entire body isn't on camera, doesn't mean that your body is not communicating. Okay. As it pertains to your camera in and of itself, you want to have it at about or slightly above eye level. Okay. One of the reasons to do that is actually in regards to the audio, because if you are slightly looking up, it opens up your vocal cords and allows you then to project better, allowing you to be heard better. Okay. So again, camera, it should be at eye level or slightly above. You want to make sure that you're centering yourself in frame. And how you do that is by using what I call the 3-finger tool. So you take your 3 fingers, you put it on top of your head. And if you can fit 2 to 3 fingers between the top of your head and the top of the frame, you are perfectly framed. And Jennifer, you are framed well. So don't take that as a negative in any way because you have a little bit of extra space. But I see a lot of people where they're way down here and they have just a whole third or even half of the screen is blank. They're not there. So again, that 3-finger rule, that is a good rule of thumb, as it were, right? And then, of course, occasionally look right into the camera. If you are doing an in-person presentation, are you going to scan the room and occasionally stop at someone and look them in the eye? 100% you are. This simulates eye contact. So periodically, even if you are reading from a deck, take the time to look up at the camera and make that visual connection with people. It simulates eye contact and it is engaging. Okay. So bullet number 2, background and lighting. This one is very, very important, guys. some people have really cluttered or busy backgrounds, and that is super distracting for participants. Just for the sake of demonstration, I'm going to turn off my virtual background for a second. And let me say, I love virtual backgrounds because it gives you an opportunity to do a little bit of branding. My background is, in my opinion, very cluttered. So it's not something that I generally want people to see, right? Because it could be distracting. So that is blur. If you don't have a virtual background, at very least blur your background if it's distracting and cluttered. So let me turn off that blur, right? There's a lot of stuff going on behind me. I have my bar cart over here. I have my Iron Man thing over here. I've got some signs. I've got some movies in the background back here behind my safe. Like it just looks cluttered and distracting. So this is not a good way to present. So if you don't have any clutter, right, it's a fairly simple background, then obviously don't worry about blurring. Don't worry about a virtual background. But if it's any way distracting or could be perceived as distracting, use a virtual background. And on that note, if you have one, use a green screen as well, because that makes a big difference in how you project on screen. I'm not currently using a green screen because I wanted to do that demonstration. But obviously, if I'm moving around a lot, you start to see that little shadow, that little chase. And so that also can be distracting. Now, when it comes to lighting, I see this a lot. Make sure that you are facing your light source. And ideally, you want to have a window behind your camera because natural light is absolutely the best. But if you don't have that option, get a couple of ring lights. I actually have 2 ring lights on either side of my camera so that I am well lit. What you oftentimes will run into is people who will have some type of light source behind them. And that gives you what I refer to as the witness protection look, right? So if you're going to be on camera, guys, you want people to be able to see you. So make sure that you are well lit. Now, again, I'm working from 7 monitors, so there is a lot of light coming from these monitors, but I just want you to look really quickly at the difference between when I have my lights on and when I turn them off. So you can see that I'm still fairly well lit, again, from all of the monitors, but there is a significant difference now. My coloring, I'm a little bit more blue because it's all of the light from my screens as opposed to my ring lights. So again, if you're going to be on camera, make sure that you're well lit so that people can see you and can see your facial expressions and such. All right, let's move on to audio. This one is uber important, guys. People will tolerate bad video. They will not tolerate bad audio. Now, of course, don't use bad video as an excuse to stay off camera. But if you have to choose, make sure that your audio sounds good. Test your microphone frequently. They are not all created equally either, right? If you have an inboard microphone within your laptop, chances are it was provided by a manufacturer that gave the lowest bid when they were building it. So that means it's not going to be typically of a high quality. Not that it's not going to work for you, but have the appropriate expectations for it. Make sure that you're testing your microphone again often. Record yourself and listen back at it at multiple distances and angles to find your sweet spot. I myself use a Blue Yeti. I absolutely love it. It has some directional options, but not everyone's going to go out and spend a couple $100s on a microphone. But be sure that whatever microphone you're using, you take the time to test it and know how it works. Super important. And of course, when you're speaking, be sure to speak relatively slowly. Be aware of your pace, right? You want to speak slowly and clearly and enunciate as well as you can and have some appropriate pauses throughout as well. I'm actually moving at a fairly quick pace because obviously we don't have a significant amount of time and this is not a huge training program. And I have a fair amount of content that I want to get through, but be aware of your tone and your pace as well. And lastly, attitude or your energy, right? If you're going to go and deliver an in-person training program or you're going to do in-person networking, you would equate that to being at 100% energy, right? You have a little bit of adrenaline, you're pacing the room a little bit, you're feeling good, people are vibing with you. But I see people show up to virtual events and their body language is all wrong. They're slouched over. They're maybe at 50% energy at best. Guys, if you're going to deliver virtually, you got to have high energy. And if 100% is your in-person, virtual, you should be at 120, 130%. Okay. If you have the opportunity, right, one of those stand-up desks or a camera that you can maneuver a little bit, stand up. Okay, stand up to deliver, because again, you can then engage your body language. Reiterating again, use facial expressions and hand gestures. If that's how you naturally talk, you want to deliver as what's naturally for you. Okay. And lastly, when it comes to attitude and energy, make sure that you're bringing your participants into the discussion as much as possible. Even if it's a webinar, encourage them to use the Q&A, encourage them to use the emojis from time to time. If chat is open, ask them some overhead questions that they can respond to in chat. It helps to draw them back into the presentation. Again, going back to my 7 monitors, there's a lot of things to distract people. You are delivering in Zoom. So you want to bring them back to Zoom by having them do something here in Zoom. All right. Let me make sure I've covered everything, and I believe that I have. All right. So moving on, this is one of my favorite parts about this presentation. You may have seen this video before, but I'm going to go ahead and play it and then talk about it for a second.
Mr. Ponton, I believe you have a filter turned on in the video settings. You might want to take
we're
a look.
trying to, can you hear me, Judge?
I can hear you. I think it's a filter.
It is, and I don't know how to remove it. I've got my assistant here. She's trying to, but I'm prepared to go forward with it. I'm here live. I'm not a cat.
I can see that. I think if you click the up arrow next to this.
So I love playing that video for a couple of reasons, especially again, as I'm trying to make a point here about virtual delivery. The one thing that I truly love about it, and makes me laugh, I've seen this video quite literally 1,000 times, but the one thing that I love is the white-haired gentleman up in the right-hand corner. Like, he's not paying attention at all to what's happening in this proceeding. But all of a sudden, the guy who's talking, who is the cat, he says, I'm not a cat. And then you see this guy with the white hair look up and just give this shit-eating grin, and it makes me laugh every single time. So again, given the limited time that I have today, I'm not going to go through all of the platform features that are available in the standard version of Zoom in any significant depth. But please, please, please don't be this guy. Be very careful about using the platform features if you aren't familiar with them or haven't practiced with them or have someone to support you in running them. Because ultimately, if you are letting your kids play with your Zoom account, they may change a setting in there that you can't figure out how to turn off. And that can ultimately create a disengagement with your participants. Okay, so I hope that point lands. And again, I just find it funny. So I always like to use that as a talking point. So really briefly, these are the platform tools that are available in the standard paid version of Zoom. And I believe even for the most part in the free version of Zoom. So these are things like breakout rooms, polling questions, utilizing chat as often as possible. Because you will occasionally get people that I refer to as wallflowers, right? You want to ask questions and have them come off of mute, but they don't want to come off of mute and they don't really even want to be on camera. However, they are willing to participate in the chat. So be sure to leverage that feature. Screen sharing is also an engagement feature. Not only can you share your deck, but you can also do demos and maybe work with a Miro board, right? And have people participate in that screen share, moving things around. You want to get people participating as much as possible. Use things like reactions. Guys, we are in the social media age. People are on LinkedIn and Facebook dropping likes left, right, and center. If you're not using something that they're already familiar with to increase engagement, you're ultimately missing out. Using the raise hand feature allows them to kind of self-select whether or not they want to participate or agree with you with a particular point that you're making. There's also whiteboarding and annotations, which essentially operate the same. Whiteboarding, as you can imagine, and the name sounds, it's just a big white screen that people can draw on virtually. Annotation is just a little bit different in that it allows you to have a deck up like I have right now, but people can then draw on that deck. So I could, as an example, say, all right, guys, I want you to choose the annotation feature, select the stamp and then stamp on which one of these engagement features you feel resonates most with you. And that again is a way to increase engagement throughout the course of your event. Again, audio and video are super important for engagement. You want to make sure that you're on camera, and you absolutely want to make sure that your audio sounds good. And the last one that I want to touch on is recording. Believe it or not, recording is actually a disengagement feature. Okay. Obviously, there is benefits to recording. As a presenter, I always go back and watch my game film, right? I want to see what I did well, what I didn't do well, what I can improve. And obviously, you want to have the opportunity to be able to play it later, maybe post it on YouTube, or have participants who couldn't attend live see it later. However, there are a lot of people out there where if they know they're being recorded, they absolutely will disengage. They will back down a little bit from participating fully. So if you don't have to record, or you don't have a specific reason to, I absolutely recommend not recording your virtual training or event. And again, when it comes to the lights, camera, action portion, those are all things that matter when it comes to networking as well as virtual training, guys, because how you show up to a virtual networking one-on-one virtual coffee is super important, right? You're not going to show up to an in-person networking event wearing your sleepy pants and a tube top. You're going to be prepared, right? When you sit down across the table from someone, you're not going to lounge down and put your foot up on the desk. You're going to have good posture, and you're going to sit forward, and you're going to pay attention to what's going on in front of you. Same rules apply in virtual. It's just a different medium of communication. So keep those things in mind as you go throughout potentially training and or doing those virtual networking events. High level tip, guys, have your participants do something in the platform once every 5 to 10 minutes. And that doesn't necessarily mean have them do 10 polling questions and nothing else. That gets really redundant and kind of stupid. You want to have some variety, right? If you're doing, let's say every 10 minutes, a 1 hour event, that means you want to have at least 6 engagement opportunities. And that could be 2 to 3 polls, having a breakout room, playing a video like I did, having some chat prompts, right? Having a little bit of variety of things to do keeps people engaged, right? And it's called a pattern interrupt, right? If they're just listening to you talk for 45 minutes to an hour, that's going to get boring. Even me, I think I'm a pretty engaging speaker, but if I just talk at you for an hour, it's going to get boring. So you want to have them do things from time to time throughout the course of your engagement with them. So I would love to hear from all of you, and I'm actually going to open the chat just briefly. I would love to hear from 1 or 2 of you. What are some potential best practices or lessons learned from today's event? There we go. Mike says getting a mic absolutely makes a difference. And Mike, this is not a criticism in any way, but I would look into getting a better camera for you as well. They're going crazy.
I'll tell you, yeah, but so the equipment is one for me, but also the engagement, the constant engagement is something that we're not really doing. So I'm going to look at our format and kind of work on that as well, because I think that's a big reason that people enjoy here is the end of the presentation where they do get to engage.
Yep,
Let's
absolutely.
see, Haley, put something else in here. Anyone else?
Haley says moving my darn desk to better lighting. Yeah, 100%, Haley. And, you know, again, even if you can't move into a space with better lighting, ring lights, cube lights, they're fairly inexpensive on Amazon, and you could have them to you by tomorrow. Highly recommend that you do that. At least get one for sure. So that is essentially a wrap of my presentation today, Jennifer.
Thank you.
We'll drop all of our information into the chat as well here in a second, but let me stop sharing.
So we do have some questions already, which is awesome.
Fantastic.
First, Mike wants to know if you have any brands that you recommend for the camera. I know we've got the Blue Yeti for the mic. I wrote that down.
So the camera that I use is I bought it on Amazon. It's a Nexigo, Nexigo 4K high definition camera. It actually comes with a little remote control that allows me to zoom in, zoom out. I can change the angles of it as well. I think I paid roughly around $200 for it. A great investment, honestly. If you're going to show up on camera, you want to show up as well as you can. And I feel like this one does a really good job for me. But there are certainly some others that are a little bit more reasonably priced and around that $100 price point that will do equally as good of a job.
Okay. And then I had a lesson learned when I was traveling a few weeks back. We had this great rental house that we stayed in for a while, but I did my disruptor discussions from there. And while I got like the background was fine, I didn't have my ring light with me. So we had talked about getting one of those cubes because they're better for travel. They're just more compact.
Yep.
And supposedly they're like just exceptional lighting as well. So
yeah, I have a few clients that absolutely swear by them. I mean, for one, again, like you said, they're easy to travel with. Like the ring lights, they're pretty big, right? So it's can you put them in a suitcase? Yes, but they do take up a bit of space. Those cube lights provide really fantastic light, and they are really easily portable as well.
Awesome. Okay, cool. So I've got a couple questions. We've got our questions we ask every week. If you guys have questions, anyone in the audience, please drop them in. We do have a couple that I'll get started with, and then I'll ask you my questions. We're going to mix it up today a little bit.
Okay. All right.
So Michael wants to know, for someone who's looking to start doing more virtual events for groups, where do you start?
Honestly, Michael, it is it all starts with your content, right? You want to make sure that you have well-practiced content, because one of the worst things that you can do is have all of the bells and whistles, but not be confident in your presentation delivery. So, make sure that you have a well-designed content. If you're going to use a deck, highly recommend working with a professional. I wouldn't necessarily say an instructional designer, but maybe a graphic designer to help to make it pop. But honestly, probably even more importantly, is don't Zoom alone, right? Have someone there to support you to manage all of the logistics, because if you're new to virtual presentations, the last thing that you want to do is be distracted by all the extra stuff that you need to do to make it a good engaging virtual event.
It's so true. And I mean, having you as a partner, and I say partner, but really, I mean, you run the show. I just get to show up and present. Having you to do that, first of all, I haven't had to train myself and teach myself all kinds of new things and make all the mistakes. I haven't had to spend endless hours learning about what I need and how to do it. You had it all in place for me. So the amount of time that it saved me to launch was immeasurable, because I think we can all get into that like analysis paralysis when we're trying to start a new thing in the business, virtual trainings or complete masterclass, whatever it is. And until it's perfect, and we're not going to do it. And, should we use this platform or this platform? But getting an expert on your team that says, this is how you do it, this is the best practices, this is why, and I'll manage it for you, is phenomenal.
Yeah.
And so thank you for being that for us, for me. But also it just, in every area of your business, having that expert who already knows what they're doing saves you a lot of time and money on making all the mistakes yourself.
It really does. Honestly, Jennifer, our good buddy Donnie Bovin, he shared with me when I first started with Success Champions Networking, right before my group started. He said to me, it's less about how you do the things and more about who you get to help you, because you don't need to be an expert in everything in your business that you do. Does it help to be knowledgeable? Of course it does. But do you need to be the person who does everything? No, you don't.
Yeah. And I think what Donnie's saying about that, it's kind of reminds me of that Who Not How, the book with Dan Sullivan.
Yeah.
It's really finding the right partners for all of these initiatives so that you do know that you've got someone who can save you just an enormous amount.
Yeah.
And potentially losing out audience too. Think about it. If I was to get on something and it was an absolute train wreck or dumpster fire, like you said, it's unlikely that I'm going to go back.
Right.
That's my impression, and that doesn't change. because I'm not going to take another hour of my day, another week to do it again. So really being able to start off on the right foot is super important. There's so much content out there. People have so many choices of like where to go and where to spend their time. You have to make sure that it's not just valuable, it's seamless. It's another thing you said that I want to reiterate. We talked about starting on time. We do that, right? And we do that because I had seen a post about someone who said, I went on to a training, they just chit-chatted for like 10 minutes waiting for more people to get on. And she said, and what it felt like is more important people to get on. And I said, we're not doing that. Everyone's time is valuable. And so we're going to start right at 12:02, knowing that sometimes it takes an extra minute to log in. So we give a 2-minute grace period. And we're going to get started. And anyone else who wants to come in later is more than welcome. But we're going to be respectful of the time, the people who show up on time. And I think that's super important. It's the same as we end on time for the same reason.
Yep.
All right, I'm going to ask you my 3 questions, Bernie. You've heard these as a producer over and over, so I'm assuming you've got your answers ready to go. How does your expertise bring more revenue to a business?
Well, as I said throughout my presentation, an engaged audience is primed to buy ultimately. If you're going to do virtual events, you want to create a great experience for them. But if they're showing up to the event, they're already interested and thinking about the content, which should be related to the services or products that you're providing. So in terms of things like lead generation, the people who show up to your events, they're already thinking about the services that you provide. They're already thinking about that subject matter. So if they show up, it gives you the opportunity then to reach out to them and start those sales conversations about selling your services. And there's not a business owner out there that doesn't want more leads. And when you're talking about the stuff that you do, hopefully you're exuding the passion about what you do in your event. And that bleeds through into the sales process as well, right? Because people, they ultimately buy you, right? They can go to 100 different places, right? In your case, as an example, to get lead generation, but they work with you because of you. And this is a great way to showcase who you are and entice people to want to work with you.
I'm going to add in there real quick. If you are doing a training where you are a guest, where you are not driving the ship, ask for the registrant and the attendee list.
Absolutely.
Both, because sometimes people register who don't attend, and vice versa. They attend and don't register, depending on how your settings are. So always ask for both, because the worst thing you can hear is no. I did 40 presentations last year. I asked every time, and there was only one time that they said no, it was not their policy, and that's fine. But it's really just for follow-up to make sure that they you can thank any attendees and registrants for being there and make sure that they have your information. Speaking of which, Bernie, while I start this next question, make sure that you drop your contact information in the chat if you have not already. How are you a disruptor in your space?
Well, I think from the grander scheme of my overall business in learning and development, there are other companies out there that do all of the things in learning and development. Not many of them. Most organizations, they really niche down, and obviously for good reason, right? They have their area of expertise, which is great. But what makes Insignia different is that we have access to all of the same talent that some of these really focused organizations have, right? Let's say you want a leadership development program. Well, you can go to a company that just does leadership development, and I'm sure they'll do a great program. But when they walk in and they see that, oh, wait, the onboarding is also broken, right? You're not getting the right results from onboarding, or your attrition is really, really high. They are not going to be the ones to help you to solve that problem as well. And I think that's one thing that makes us different is we are full service. You can use us to really be a bolt-on or be your training team, or you can a la carte with us and we can help with just the areas that you need, kind of that fractional model. As it pertains to virtual events, I think that, one thing that makes me disruptive is the fact that I am a facilitator as well. My background is in corporate training and delivering of training programs. Whereas a lot of virtual producers, they fell into it because they realized they had some technical expertise. But if you ask them to actually deliver a training, they can't and or don't want to. So I'm able to work with folks like you, and I can identify what you're going to need even before you realize that you need it, because I have stood in your shoes.
Sure. Last question, and this is always our most popular. We get the best feedback on this one, is what is the number one thing we can all do today with this information? What can we implement, handle today to drive more revenue to our businesses?
I think the general answer on this one is, again, if you are a subject matter expert, do virtual events and make sure that you don't Zoom alone. Because again, the people who show up for your events, they're already interested in the things that you're doing. And it's a crazy easy way to get in touch with your ideal clients. Because again, if you're doing an event on, I don't know, a leadership topic, right? The people who show up for that leadership topic, clearly they're thinking in their head, my organization has an issue with leadership development. And that's a warm lead now for you. All you have to do is tell them.
I love it. And I'll add in there, you know, when you want to drive more revenue to your business and you're looking at these trainings, where else can you be doing training? One of the prompts that I love is, what subject can you talk about without any preparation for 20 minutes, right? Think about what those subjects are. I see some of the attendees in here, and I know what you could talk about for 20 minutes. Start there. And don't speak to experts in your industry or in your prospect list. Speak to people who are just starting out. Give like a 101 training for people who know nothing, because it's so simple and obvious to you. And it is complete news and new information to people who don't know it.
Absolutely.
And I run into this a lot with sales, because I'm like, how do people not know this? But they don't. They don't. And it's the more simple you get, the more granular you get, the better it is for people who really need to bring that information and make the change within their businesses.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. You know, I think people, as they progress throughout the course of their career, they get what I refer to as expert syndrome, right? They forget what it's like to be that new person, to not know all of the steps, because it's now just ingrained in what they do. It's become a habit. So focusing in and teaching people what it takes to get started keeps you really grounded and engaged in your own business and your own subject matter, makes you remember those basics that not everyone sees as basic.
Absolutely. Okay, well, thank you, Bernie, for being here. I'll see you next week too, but behind the camera next week. This was amazing and so interesting. And I've actually learned a lot that I'm going to be bringing into our Disruptor discussions moving forward. You know, the equipment is something, here's the thing, you guys, done is better than perfect, right? And as you grow and as you do better, you invest, you get the information, you get the right equipment, but you don't need all the fancy stuff to get started. Just start and then go from there. Thank you for being here. Next week, you guys, I want to tell you about our guest. It is Danny Vermont. He is with Captain JV, teaching business owners how to leverage joint venture relationships to grow their businesses. He is phenomenal. He is so interesting. Has been an incredible connector for us, an appreciated asset, and just a super guy to know. And he will be Zooming from, I don't know where he is now. He's either in London or he might be in Israel right now. I can't remember, but he's always moving around, and it's always great to catch up with him. It will be a lot of great information for really perfecting that channel in your business. So would love for you guys to join us. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Bernie. This has been really, really great. And everyone go out and have the best day ever.